Welcome to the many interpretations of Nanotyrannus. That's right, we are already doing one. I was wrong, but obviously I wasn't the only one who was wrong. Isn't that right, Lakota?
I would like to defend myself in saying that with the evidence that we had, it suggested it was fine.
I'm
Stan, I was wrong. I'm singing the Stan wrong song. There, happy?
Do the kicks!
No.
Yeah, and so what better way to celebrate being wrong than to do a many interpretations of Nanotyrannus to kind of like welcome it back? These last couple weeks have been absolutely insane. It's been a very exciting time. There's been a lot of really amazing new information that has come out about basically the Hell Creek Formation in general, but more specifically with some of the theropods that lived there. Now, I want to start this video off by kind of like doing a breakdown of everything that we know about Nanotyrannus now. I want to talk about the history of Nanotyrannus, and I want to, more importantly, I want to talk about the recent paper that argued for its validity and why it seems to be that the consensus is probably that Nanotyrannus is back. If you guys already know about all of that, or you just don't really want to see it, you can skip to this timestamp right here to get straight to the media depictions. So I'll see you guys then. But for everybody else who is staying, here's the history of Nanotyrannus. So, Nanotyrannus was first discovered or officially described back in 1946. Skull material is what was found, and it was believed to be a species of Gorgosaurus, known as Gorgosaurus lancensis. That's how it stayed for a little bit up until around 1988, when Robert Backer, Philip Currie, and Michael Williams all took a look at the fossils and said, hey, this is actually a different species of Tyrannosaur. And so they renamed it to Nanotyrannus lancensis. Of course, Nanotyrannus translates to small tyrant, which is of course a reference to the fact that it was pretty small, especially compared to the other Tyrannosaur that lived in its environment, that being Tyrannosaurus rex. And that's how it stayed for a little bit, up until around the 1999 area, when other researchers came to look at the fossils and said, hey, what if these are growth stages of Tyrannosaurus rex? That's when the great debate started. The debate between people who think that Nanotyrannus is its own thing and people who think that it's simply just growth stages of T-Rex and Nanotyrannus doesn't exist at all. Eventually, a consensus was reached and most researchers believed that Nanotyrannus was not real and that the fossils we found were simply just young T-Rex. That's kind of what most of the evidence that we had supported at the time, so most researchers kind of fell into that camp. Even me, I was of course in that camp. I believed that Nanotyrannus was simply just growth stages of Tyrannosaurus rex. As we now know, many of us were wrong. Myself included, go figure. Because around last week, at the time of recording, here in 2025, an amazing paper was released that was done by Lindsay Zano and James Napoli. They had officially gotten the chance to examine the dueling dinosaurs fossil. If you don't know what that fossil is, it's this amazing fossil that was discovered all the way back in 2006 that showcases a Triceratops kind of locked in combat with a relatively small theropod. Now, it was believed that this relatively small theropod was a teenage T-Rex, but of course, we never really had the chance to properly look at it because ever since it was discovered, it went through a lot of legal issues. So they weren't officially able to start examining and prepping it until 2020. 5 years ago. And obviously that is a very lengthy process, and they had been working on it all the way up until about 2025. And their findings were nothing short of amazing. And they provided some incredibly solid evidence that the theropod that is preserved with the Triceratops was not a teenage T-Rex, and rather was Nanotyrannus. Now, if you want all of the really good details about why they reached this conclusion, go and check out James Napoli's video on the skeleton crew. That will be linked down below. He, of course, like I said before, he is one of the authors of the paper, and he breaks it all down incredibly well. So again, after this video, if you want more details on that, go and watch it. But the evidence that they provided, like I said, was solid. First of all, this was not a teenager that was preserved with the Triceratops. This was a fully grown individual. And it was about half the size of Tyrannosaurus rex, so it certainly wasn't a juvenile. It also shares no unique traits with Tyrannosaurus, which is huge in identifying a species that is meant to be the same species as another species. And there's just so many differences between Nanotyrannus and Tyrannosaurus that cannot just be chalked up to ontogenetic growth, like the placement of the blood vessels, that paired with the fact that they had a different tooth count, or that paired with the fact that their arms were longer. Like, there definitely were just too many changes that Nanotyrannus would have to go through in order to reach the full-size T-Rex that we all know. And again, that paired with the fact that this fellow was fully grown, that kind of just seals the deal. So yes, as of now, Nanotyrannus is back. But it's not alone. They also had the chance to look at other supposed like young T-Rex specimens, and they concluded that some of them were also Nanotyrannus, including the Jane specimen. Now, the Nanotyrannus that's in the like locked in combat with Triceratops, that one's been named Bloody Mary. That one is the species known as Nanotyrannus lancensis. But Jane here, which is one of the most famous fossils out there of now known as Nanotyrannus, is actually a second species known as Nanotyrannus lithaeus. So there was not just one species of Nanotyrannus in the Hell Creek Formation. There was two, which is just... like, it is just so cool. It's seriously so cool. Seriously, all of the stuff that we've learned so far is amazing. Now, obviously, this is going to change a lot going forward. Our understanding of Tyrannosaurus growth was mostly based off of what we now know as Nanotyrannus specimens. So because we know that those are not young T-Rex and they're actually a different species, we're probably going to have to rethink some things that we thought we knew about Tyrannosaur growth. And I'm very excited for that. There's going to be a lot of awesome papers published in the next few years. I can already see it. But okay, now we're all finally caught up. So welcome to everybody who skipped. We're going to get right into the media depictions. Now, this is going to be like a mixed bag. A lot of the depictions, like some of them, they are meant to be Nanotyrannus. Like, you know, the narrators call them Nanotyrannus and stuff like that. But some of them are simply just like teenage T-Rexes that were based off of what we now know as Nanotyrannus specimens. I included a lot of those because, of course, you know, it just feels like it's fair since it was always misidentified as a young T-Rex. It feels fair to showcase some of the depictions that were meant to be young T-Rex, even though they were based on, you know, not young T-Rex fossils. But just like, that's just a full-on warning. That's what we're going into with this video. It's gonna be a little bit of a mixed bag. But let's just get into it. So I want to start off with walking with dinosaurs. Now, I don't know for sure if this is meant to be Nanotyrannus. The Walking with Dinosaurs wiki does call it that. And the timeline does match up. Walking with Dinosaurs would have been made when Nanotyrannus was valid the first time. So it certainly does make sense that they would include it in the documentary, especially in the Hell Creek Formation alongside T-Rex. Now, the fellow that's portrayed here is too small to be like a fully grown Nanotyrannus, so it's likely a juvenile or something like that, because we can see the T-Rex pick it up. And while Nanotyrannus was smaller than T-Rex by quite a bit, it wasn't that small. Like, we would probably be looking up to them for the most part. So this fella, if it is Nanotyrannus, is most likely a juvenile. But it does have some of the traits that we now know Nanotyrannus had, like the elongated snout that is pretty thin and kind of like an elongated body. Not much else I can say about it. It is a very cool little practical effect. Next up is the mystery dinosaur. We have quite a few Nanotyrannus portrayed right here, and I really dig their designs. They have this really cool kind of like orange coloration that's complemented by some black coloration, and the skeletal structure matches up very nicely. Elongated skull that's very thin and relatively thin bodies, as well as like proportionally long arms, which is something that is pretty unique to Nanotyrannus. Like, it's very different from other Tyrannosaurids out there. And that actually brings me to my next point. It also appears, this is something that they learned while examining the available fossils, that it seems like Nanotyrannus does not even belong to the same family as T-Rex. It's not that closely related to T-Rex or Tarbosaurus or Daspletosaurus. Instead, it seems like it belongs to a separate group, possibly Dryptosauridae, but there's also like a new proposed group known as Nanotyrannidae. Either way, it's not that closely related to T-Rex, which is just wild. The Hell Creek Formation has never been cooler than it is right now. I'll tell you that for $5. Well, I already told you that, so give me the money. Anyway, I really like this design. It also does have long legs. Nanotyrannus did have long legs. It seems like Nanotyrannus would go after smaller, speedier prey, the kind of things that Tyrannosaurus would not prioritize. After that is Jurassic Fight Club. Now, obviously, there's a lot of problems with Jurassic Fight Club, but one thing that it did get correct is Nanotyrannus. Like, I mean, the fact that Nanotyrannus is here. It's a pretty good design too. Like, the snout shape looks good. The head shape looks good. The body, it looks pretty decent, and it does have long legs. One of my only gripes is how short that neck is. I don't think Nanotyrannus had quite that short of a neck. But it has a really cool kind of green coloration. And in the documentary, we do see it go up against like young Tyrannosaurus. That is something that possibly happened. You know, we don't know too much about Nanotyrannus's interaction with T-Rex. Like, we don't know what kind of relationship they had in the Hell Creek Formation, but I'm sure something like that is certainly possible. Next up is Dinosaurs Decoded. I think that these fellows were meant to be young T-Rex, but I'm including them anyway. There's like two separate designs that we see. They both kind of like have smaller proportions, but like elongated proportions as well, kind of. They don't look too reminiscent to how Nanotyrannus looked. I mean, they are slimmer for the most part, but they are kind of like, this one especially is bulkier, which I think it's meant to be like an older young T-Rex. So it was like kind of growing into its bulk is what they were trying to get at. Whereas this one is a lot more thin and certainly looks a lot more like what Nanotyrannus would. It's certainly not the best design in the world, but it's not terrible either. Next up is Dino Deathmatch, released in 2015. Now, this documentary actually is about the dueling dinosaurs fossil, and it holds up incredibly well. It argues for the validity of Nanotyrannus as its own species, and it has a glorious Nanotyrannus design. Like, I love the way that this thing looks. My only gripe is that it doesn't have lips. Of course, lips are not things that are confirmed. I understand that, but, you know, me personally, I'm on the side of lips. But the colors that are present here, the quality of the CGI, it all just looks amazing. And skeletally speaking, this does look a lot like Nanotyrannus, especially with the shape of that skull and just the whole shape of the body in general. It seriously looks beautiful. And again, this documentary does certainly hold up nowadays. It was made or released 10 years ago. So it's cool that now we can like look back at it and say, hey, you guys were right. Also, one thing I wanted to point out, because we can get a good close-up of its skull or its head right here, you'll notice that it has like a small crest right in front of its eye. That's known as a lacrimal crest, and that is something that Nanotyrannus did have. So a nice attention to detail right there. But no, I love this one. This one is probably like one of my favorite designs that we've looked at thus far. And again, it's just, it's a very cool documentary. I do recommend it. After that is Dino Dana. I also really like the way that this one looks. It has a lot of the traits that you would expect from Nanotyrannus, that thin, elongated skull and a thin body overall. The Safari LTD figure is obviously based off the Dino Dana one. And yeah, no, it's got some cool colors about it. I like the striping that it has going on. And again, I really like the way that the skull shape looks. While we're talking about figures real quick, obviously Mattel just released a Nanotyrannus figure, which is kind of good timing on their part. It's got this really kind of cool blue coloration with two different types of blues. Nowadays, I'm thinking of Nanotyrannus as having blue because of art like this, because it looks amazing. But the skull shape is pretty off, like it's way too blocky. And yeah, no, it's not a good depiction of Nanotyrannus because it's just way too bulky or way too blocky. PNSO also released one. It's certainly way bulkier than most other depictions we've seen and maybe a little bit too bulky. And I technically already owned a Nanotyrannus figure, that being the Beast of the Mesozoic Juvenile T-Rex, as it was called. Now, I believe that this figure was based off of the Jane specimen, and as we know, Jane is a species of Nanotyrannus known as Nanotyrannus lithaeus. So this does certainly have the proportions of a Nanotyrannus. How thin that snout is, the elongated body, these really long arms, which also look really nice, and these long legs. All traits that are present with Nanotyrannus. And yeah, as far as the Safari one goes, I actually bought this the day that the paper like was released, as kind of like a little bit of an apology to Nanotyrannus. Next up is Dinosaur Revolution. In the documentary, he's portrayed as a young T-Rex, of course, but from what I could tell, it looks like he might be based off of the Jane specimen. I believe that's what his skull really looks like. I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. And in that way, he's got the proportions of a Nanotyrannus rather than a young T-Rex. And I'm sure that many of you are thinking, what does this mean for young T-Rex? Are we like, do we have any young T-Rex specimens? We probably do. I believe that it's thought that Teen Rex at the Denver Museum is a young T-Rex, and that's currently being prepped and probably studied. So we're probably going to learn a little bit more about young T-Rex after these developments right here. But that's probably just going to take a little bit of time. Just everything that we knew about young T-Rex was mostly based off of Nanotyrannus, and now that we know for sure that Nanotyrannus was not a young T-Rex, we're probably going to have to rethink a few things. But anyway, this one looks glorious. I love how he has like small amounts of feathers that kind of look like a mohawk, and the colors are just beautiful. Very beautiful. I love it. Dino Hunters has this one right here. Really not that great. It's basically a scaled down Jurassic Park T-Rex. So it doesn't match up that well to Nanotyrannus. This is probably like one of the first ones that we've seen that just isn't that great. Most of them kind of like capture the whole spirit of Nanotyrannus, but this one certainly doesn't. The T-Rex is also just the Jurassic Park T-Rex, which is certainly interesting. Next up is Carnivore's Cityscape. This looks so cool. I love the way that this one looks. It's really cool to see this animal in the carnivore style, first of all. And to see it with such a cool design is also just awesome. It's got the whole skeletal structure down. It's got those quills on the back, which is just very fun. It's a fun addition. And the colors are also sick. One gripe is that it's breaking its wrists, but I think that most of them that we've looked at so far have been breaking their wrists, which is no bueno. I believe that the animal was also leaked for Jurassic World Alive with images like this. From what we can see so far, I think it looks pretty cool. Like, it has the skeletal structure down, that very thin skull, and the colors, I dig the colors. Nice blue mixed in with some browns and some oranges and yellows by the looks of it. Yeah, no, I'll definitely be getting it when it eventually releases. So the really cool thing about this development in paleontology history is that we technically have a brand new dinosaur in prehistoric kingdom, because the adolescent growth stage of Tyrannosaurus rex in this game was actually based off of the Jane specimen. And as I mentioned before, the Jane specimen is a species of Nanotyrannus known as Nanotyrannus lithaeus. So technically speaking, if you wanted to make a Nanotyrannus enclosure, you could. All you'd have to do is make sure that they couldn't mature past their adolescence growth stage, and then you could just have a Nanotyrannus enclosure. I might do that because I think it's a really fun idea. Anyway, here's what it looks like. Like I said, it was based off of the Jane specimen, so it has all of those traits, like the thin snout that's pretty elongated, and elongated body too. I think these guys are a little bit smaller than what Jane was. You're able to like adjust the size in the adolescent growth stage, so you can make them a bit bigger than this if you want. They also do become a little bit bulkier too, which is a little bit different. But let's see them walk around. Yeah, see here, there. Look at them go. See. That's actually like they would have probably been running around. Nanotyrannus would have, and obviously, you know, these are meant to be young Tyrannosaurus, but because they're based off of a different animal in terms of their skeleton, this still does technically count. They even have the crest present that Nanotyrannus had. So they're actually like really good designs in that department. I especially love this one. I love the feathered one because we don't have a lot of feathered Nanotyrannus depictions out there, and it would be a lot more reasonable to place feathers onto something like Nanotyrannus. Whoa, see, they're moving fast. This is probably what Nanotyrannus did. You know, it was probably a pretty fast pursuit predator that would chase after relatively small prey. But yeah, no, brand new, basically a brand new creature in prehistoric kingdom, and I love that. I'm so happy about that. And it's a very good design when you really look at it. And there we have it, folks. That is the many interpretations of Nanotyrannus. Again, this is kind of like my celebration to it returning, as well as my apology, basically, for not believing in Nanotyrannus. But no, in all seriousness, though, I mostly go off of like what I think the evidence like most supports. And everything that I heard beforehand, it just didn't feel like there was enough evidence to support the validity of Nanotyrannus. But now we actually do have substantial evidence. And as a result, yes, I'm going to shift my thinking. That's just how paleontology works. We have literally seen how paleontology works in action over the last week with the developments of Nanotyrannus. Many researchers have changed their tune after they got this information. That includes researchers like Mark Whitten, Steve Brusati, I believe Thomas Carr, and a few other researchers out there have changed their tune because this is good evidence. It is good evidence that helps support it. And that's what paleontology is at the end of the day. You go off of what the evidence supports. And this evidence definitely supports that Nanotyrannus is a separate genus from Tyrannosaurus rex. So that's where we are. And now I see Nanotyrannus as completely valid, and so do many others out there. So it's certainly been a really fun time. I've been having like a great time kind of like diving into all of this. Nanotyrannus has quickly become one of my favorite animals as a result, because I've simply been learning as much as I can about it. It's been fun. It's been fun. But yeah, no, that's pretty much all I have for this one. If you guys liked this video and you like dinosaur related content, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you on board. And if you want to help support me and the channel, I do have a channel membership and a Patreon. Both of those links are down below in the description. Thank you so much to everybody who's currently supporting me on those. You guys are really helping out a lot, and I really do appreciate you. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome day.